once stopping at a store in Grass Lake, and I saw this book. And since my roots come from the farm in Ohio, I wanted to see if he had any close calls similar to the ones that I had. You know, life was risky back then. Mom and Dad thought they had control of 3 kids, but it really didn't happen. And there's a lot of things that they'll never know, that we had our own fun and so on with it. So I was kind of wondering what this guy did to get in trouble. So I got a hold of Alex and quickly made some question about it, that I have friends from Grass Lake and they knew of this guy, so it wasn't hard to get a hold of him. And delighted that he's coming here and share some of his close calls with us. And they were checking his website out. He was still busy writing. He wrote another second edition of more stories, and he's probably got more stories going to come yet. So today he's going to share some of these stories with us. I don't know much about your background, but I do know you're the editor of the newspaper for Grass Lake, and they still have a newspaper. Which is great. So Alex, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, sir. Excellent. Nice job. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. President, appreciate you inviting me in here. And viewers on Channel 18, welcome to a little bit of my life here at the Saline District Library. I want to thank all of you for coming in and sharing some time with me today. As you know, I own the Grass Lake Times newspaper. I brought a sample for everyone here to take home with them, and realize that I'm the only person on the staff at the newspaper. Chase, you can understand what that's like being the only person on the staff. So you do everything. I lick the stamps. I go to the post office. I get it printed. I go pick it up. I collate it. I store it. I do the inserts. And I do everything, including the typographical errors that I'm sure some of you will find. To get back to a little bit of my background, I grew up in Stockbridge. I was born a twin, and we were born on our mother's birthday. Having a gift like that exempted us forever from having to buy her a present, because what more could you want than twins on your birthday? And we've had many celebrations of holidays and birthdays in our house, and invariably we will start talking about the close calls we had growing up, and things like with horses and equipment around. Farming's a dangerous life. I think most of you have a rural connection here, but farming is the 4th most dangerous occupation in this nation. And I knew of farmers who were killed on either side of the farm I grew up on. And everyone I grew up with had scars or some type of mayhem visited upon them. And I was lucky. Not only did I have a twin sometimes to help me out. I mean, I always had a twin, but she sometimes helped me out. But my father was a family physician in Stockbridge. And my mother was a writer, and she operated a local newspaper in Stockbridge. So I had a pretty information-rich childhood. And like most people on the farm, my family, they worked off the farm, as did most of my neighbors. They had second jobs. A lot of them worked for the auto industry. They would put in their hours, come home, and then with their family, the riches of their children, they would have them in the fields working for them. So that's how it was back in the 1960s. Everybody worked hard all the time. They had something they were between doing or something along that line. I'm sure you can relate to me, but that's like, I remember going off to college and thinking how wonderful it was to sleep in until 10 o'clock. And then it was wonderful to sleep in until 11 and 12, and then I had to check up after that. But I did want to tell you today, what I'm going to do is I have a couple of stories that I want to read to you. One of them is from my second edition called Second Chances. And the third one is from my a book I might release this year, I'm not sure, but it's called Close Calls on the Farm Off to School. And this deals with more of the things that you got into in junior high and high school, and that includes girls and guys falling in love with each other. I was lucky in that respect, and you'll hear some more about that in the story that I'll read to you. Again, my name's Alex Weddon, Alex R. Weddon, and if you take the first 5 letters of my name and rearrange them, you can spell the word relax, which I hope you can all do and relax and enjoy my presentation. But I did have a question for you, though. I mean, I wrote a book about close calls on a farm, but how many here have had a close call in the past week or so? Any hands on that? No? Okay. Well, they do happen, and what's happened in my family, we would rehash it over a table, a dinner or whatever, or a holiday, and my brothers were older than me. I was the youngest. My twin and I were the youngest in the family of 7. And we would hear stories told and polished and made funnier and funnier with every retelling. And my mother passed away in 2008, and my dad died in 2009. And through the period leading up to that and after that, the family was always together talking about these stories, and they impressed upon me that it'd be nice to have those written down, since I was a newspaper editor and had all this free time to do this. And I said, well, typical brother and sisters taking care of the younger one. So I did. I started, and I think all of you have life stories that you wish you could remember or do remember but haven't written down, and I'll tell you what I did. And I just took a blank piece of paper and I started writing 2 or 3 words of each incident, like getting trampled, or the barn caving in on me, or, and then anywhere on a paper. You don't even have to keep it structured. I think it's a free-form creative process for you to do that, and just write out these first sentences and then revisit them and start writing out a little bit more, and before you know it, you'll have enough stories going. And once you've written 3 or 4 stories, the rest will come a lot easier. And you'll find it's real easy to write these stories. The work comes when you have to rewrite them and you have to get it the way you want it. I was lucky because I have a proofreader for my newspaper. So I serialized these stories from 2010 through 2011, and I was able to knock off 1,000 words a week or so. And then my proofreader would take care of some of the typographical and other errors in the stories, and then I would polish them up, and I had them digitized already. So I had enough collections for 3 books, and maybe 4 with what I've been told through various trade shows and other meetings with other people that have read my stories. They will tell me, and I'm sure you'll find it to be the same with you, I didn't do anything that unusual, the stuff that happened to me. I think you've all have gone through that. If you've ever been kicked, beaten, stung, burned, or cut, that just happens. So it's not like anything that different, but I was able to put it in the paper. People read it, they think of what they did, and then they start telling me about it, and then they start, that means a lot to me because they enjoy doing that, and I enjoy hearing from them, and it gets them engaged as to what I was up to. And so I like that. The stories are funny. I've had people telling me, in particular, one woman told me she bought 2 of the books for a friend of hers who couldn't laugh. And the gentleman had a COPD and his lungs were shot, and he couldn't really laugh, but he had a lung transplant. So she bought him these 2 books and sent them over to him. And I sent him the books, and in doing so, I put a note in there that says, "You have such a wonderful friend who would like to give you a gift of laughter, even though it might kill you." I couldn't resist. But he enjoyed the books. I had a physician that's read these, and she said that she gets up at night and she can't sleep, she'll read one of these books. I don't know how to take that, but she did explain that if she was in an anxious mood, to read these books helped her relax. So I felt better after hearing her explain a little bit about her insomnia. So any other questions before I read a couple stories to you? Okay, well, I sure appreciate you coming in, and we're going to start off with a story from book number 2, and it's called Buried by Friends. This is referring to the end of the school year when I was in 4th grade, and I think that was probably the best time of any school year was the end of the school year, so I think we can relate to that. So excuse me, I'll get started on it. The end of the school year was mostly a wild and free time when I was in 4th grade. Picnics and field trips added to the fresh air joy of recess. Classes would go outside to read in the shade of the elm trees that surrounded the elementary school. It was a welcome freedom from the wooden seats in non-air-conditioned classrooms. Now right there, things are different today. You've got air-conditioned classrooms, you don't have elm trees anymore. So there's a little bit of history on that. Now the different classes shared the playground of swing sets, monkey bars, and merry-go-rounds. And 4th graders and older were allowed to use the ball diamonds with acres of undulating sand, sawgrass, and sandburrs for outfields. Since the outfields were the farthest away from the school, that was where the boys of my class gathered and carried on, out of earshot and sight of the safety patrol. The dirty brown sand was easy to dig out using giant tin cans borrowed from the school's kitchen garbage. The sand was soon crisscrossed with trenches that grew deeper and longer after every lunch hour recess. One sunny day during our last week of school, we were enjoying the destruction of all the sandworks when the time came for my pit to be topped off. Someone, and I don't know who it was, suggested that I stand in it and they would fill it in around me. Well, the sand felt cool against my skin. I held my hands at my sides. "We should leave a vent back here," Jeff, my close friend, said, pointed out. And then he added, "If he has gas from being squeezed by the sand, it can blow out." "Well, come to think of it, what if he has to go to the bathroom, Larry?" another good friend asked between lobbing cans of sand around me. "You know, boys, I have to go now, so step aside," said another to a raucous sound of guffaws and other biological noises. Before I could say, "Hey, that's the bell, recess is over," I was buried up to my chin, facing away from the school. The retreating gang of schoolmates sounded like laughing hyenas as they ran back to class through the big double doors at the end of the elementary school. Granules of sand blew into my ears. All was quiet. Another gust sent sandburrs into my hair, and I had to close my eyes. "Well, at least I'm not staring at the sun with my eyelids slit like that poor cowboy in the Rifleman TV show," I said. I told my shadow, trying to be positive and unafraid. I was going to be in trouble, that was for sure. If my twin sister saw my head out here in the desert, she would dig me out after an attack of hysteria, I mused. It is pretty funny. I'll bet there isn't another kid in 4th grade in the whole world that is doing what I'm doing right now, I told myself. One side of my mouth crinkled in pride, breaking free a rivulet of caked facial sand. A shadow wriggled and then slithered across my field of vision. I was given into an overwhelming fear of having a blue racer snake wrap around my head when the other side of my brain declared it a mirage. Panic kept erupting in different flavors. "I can't move my arms enough to dig myself out, but I can shift back and forth, so it is only a matter of time," logic countered. "Sandburn in my eye? Shut your eyes. Spider on my face? Blow it off. What if a cat comes and starts digging a potty? Bark like a dog. What if a dog comes over to go?" Well, so went my mental banter. Only a few minutes it must have gone by, but I had been mentally leapfrogging around the world, desert by desert, facing all the scorpions and sidewinders I had seen in the National Geographic. I heard the double door slam. At last, someone is coming to help me. Probably the janitor coming out for a smoke, I predicted. He'll see me and pull me out, and he'll have a broom and sweep the sand off my clothes, and things will be fine. Between gentle sand-laden zephyrs of summer wind, I heard footfalls crunching on the dried grass of the playground. Someone is coming, I'm sure of it, I thought. Why don't they say something? "When your teacher told me I had to come out here to see it myself, Mr. Weddon." I couldn't hear the rest of the welcome. The voice of our school's principal registered into my mind's hotel panic for a long stay. "I'll never make 5th grade, I blubbered to myself. "She's going to tell Mom and Dad, and that'll be it. I'll be grounded for the summer. Oh, I can be so stupid sometimes. Some friends." On and on tumbled the voice of my conscience over Mrs. P's muffled voice in the background. A shadow drew over me as she stepped near. "Mr. Alex, just what are we going to do with you? Your teacher didn't know where you were. She thought you might be on the school's roof again, or in the basement tunnels. But out here? Really?" She crossed her arms, making her shadow look like the silhouette of an attacking pterodactyl. "Your teacher is trying to teach her class, but just look. They are all lined up at the window looking at a dirty little head in the sand and their principal. What kind of boy lets his friends do this to him? She had laid out so many arguments I didn't know where to start. Maybe I could just cry and she'd give in. I couldn't decide which brilliant plan would save me from this fix. "Well, I see you almost have your arms free. Here, let me help." And with that, she helped me dig out one arm at a time. And it didn't take long, and we were walking back to the school. I was shaking sand out of my clothes and hair with every step. We pushed through the double doors and down the hallway to my class. Well, my teacher will be mad. Class will laugh at me. But I'm not in too much trouble, I thought. But by my next step, hopes vanished. The principal held my arm and escorted me right past the classroom and down the long hall to her office. Well, I stayed in her office in penitent silence until the school day ended and it was time to ride the bus home. She looked after her black frame reading glasses, their silver chain draped down and back around her neck. "You're excused to go," she wagged a bony finger for emphasis. "But come back here to this office first thing in the morning." The consensus on the school bus was that a gigantic punishment was waiting for me. It was suggested that I flee to Canada. A plan for me to come down with a disease gained traction. Diarrhea, in its colorful variations, was popular and discussed in great juvenile detail. Rabies gained favor until someone pointed out it was always fatal. You know, in those days, any and all facts of life could be learned on a school bus. There was no need to Google it. The next morning, I checked in and served my time in her office chair. I remember the sticky heat and her wall clock ticking. It wasn't my first stretch of principal office time, but it was the last for that school year. And I put that reference about fleeing to Canada because at that time, some of my older buddies had brothers that were trying to avoid the draft and would go to Canada. So that's something that I don't think a lot of the younger kids are going to get when they hear that. But I wanted it to get in there because it's true. Not that I don't know of any that, I think I knew one person that did. We had many more friends that did serve and too many that never came back. So, but that's called Buried by Friends, and it's the first chapter in this book. I arrange my books, by the way, by season: winter, spring, summer, and fall. And the reason I did that is because I was just lazy. When I'm writing and serializing this in the newspaper, whatever the day was, that's what I could remember a story, and I'd bang it out, and so it fit in through the year. I had a whole year's worth of episodes from planting to harvest, and you'll read more about that. Any questions? I'm going to get what do I do with my water? I'm going to get a slug of water here, and I'm going to read the second chapter from my upcoming book. Well, this short story is called Twintervention, and it's from Close Calls on a Farm Off to School. You know, I have never regretted sharing my birthday and ensuing parties with my twin. I didn't feel I had the right, actually. We were born on our mother's birthday, and we were forever exempt from giving her a gift. She was the only one that had to share the special day, and after birthing us, what could possibly top that? Now, having a twin meant advantages in all seasons. As we aged into middle school and new faces from distant parts of the school district shared our classrooms, new feelings and friendships grew. As in most seventh grades, interest and reciprocation created the ebb and flow of the daily drama among classmates. Who was seen talking to whom was a real conversation starter. Lunch hours were not enough for the girls to catch up, even with yakking and bursts that would put a high-speed modem to shame. My twin would share with me the news of the latest couple that liked each other, who were passing notes, and the lucky ones getting asked to school dances on Friday nights. It was frightening, the lack of privacy, but I had a back channel that saved me from face-flushing embarrassment. We didn't have a problem helping each other. Does spring like me? I would ask of Amy. Oh, I know she does, and so does everybody else. Why don't you write her a note and I'll give it to her, she offered with a faint inflection of superiority. Well, I was the last to know, of course. Does Jody still like me? I once asked of Amy in 5th grade. Well, it depends on how you read this note she gave me to give you, said Amy, holding a neatly folded sheet of lined notepaper. I carefully worked open the 5 folds and looked down upon the large cursive script. Only a few lines and the page was full. The last line told the story. Amy's pre-screened delivery read, "This is a note to say we are breaking up. I heard you like another girl, and besides, I like somebody else. Now, even though we don't like each other, we can still be friends. Jody." Well, Jody was wise beyond her 10 years. I took her up on her offer and have been friends with her and her family ever since, which is to make it 50 years about. Now, my twin helped, but my nervousness needed work. My nervousness needed a lot of work. Being around pretty girls, well, any girl, made me nervous and talkative. One 7th grade dance in the old high school gym and theater caused a psychic torture. I was at the dance on a first date with the prettiest girl in the class, up in the bench seats, leaning back with my arm around. Who was my arm around? My mind shouted the question so loudly I looked at her to see her reaction. We were chatting a little bit. Her name just evaporated from my memory. Friends stopped to talk about the music, and I hoped and wished to hear them use her name. I didn't dare interrupt them or speak out. What is her last name? What's her brother's name? Think. Oh, what is it? My brain gasped. It was all my 12-year-old mind could handle. The more I looked at her, the worse it was. I looked for a clue, an initial on her necklace, or a clip, or something like that. I quit talking altogether. Now, during the silence, she looked at the band, unaware of the Venusian sandstorm of anxiety scouring my cranium only inches away. Oh, there's Amy. I practically giggled to myself. Oh, yes, here she comes. I waved her close. I have to tell you a secret, I croaked from a parched throat. Amy bent down and I whispered in her ear. What is this girl's name? I'm not kidding, really. I mean it, really. Tell me or I'm going to die. Barb, you idiot, she said, and my loyal twin pulled back. What secret is that? My date asked coyly, her eyes looking into mine. Oh, Barb, let's go dance, I said as I stood up and took a deep breath. I repeated her name to myself constantly as we walked into the sawdust-sprinkled dance floor. Having a twin to share the seasons of life is a great advantage. With Amy to help and sometimes sabotage my romantic overtures, my tender heart was spared many painful close calls. Now, one nice thing about putting my stories up on the web, my website is closecallsonthefarm.com. And Chase will put a little graphic on right there. It'll say closecallsonthefarm.com. Or you can go to Amazon.com and buy it. Or you can go to the GrassLakeTimes.com website of my newspaper and poke around and find information about more books there. And so I would get feedback from people that would send me letters. And I just want to read a couple of them right now to you. Let's see, where was it? Comments. Okay, here's one that I thought was pretty good. So Alex, I have to say your writing sets off a huge belly laugh for me every time I read one of your stories. I relate so much to your stories of Stockbridge. This story brought back a great memory. Gary Topping, whose dad owned a dairy that provided milk for the whole community. Gary Topping gave me a ring in 7th grade that he bought for $1 at the downtown drugstore. They were real pretty when they were new, but being a tomboy and all, the ring seemed to take on a life of its own over the summer. We went to the carnival together and he was a real gentleman. My grandpa reminded me that I was too young for a ring. At the beginning of 8th grade, Jody, again it's the same Jody, told me that Gary wanted to break up. So I gave her the ring back, and Jody told me that he threw it as far as he could when she gave it to him because he said it wasn't the same ring. And then here's one I like too. It says, Alex, I smile every time I think of you and Amy and all the fun we had growing up. I will always love you. Jody. So I guess true love never fades, right? So there's a couple stories from the books that I've written, and I hope you enjoyed them. If you have any questions or close calls of yours you'd like to share with me, I'll entertain them right now.
How did you end up with the newspaper business?
Well, I actually had been operating a news service called the Local News Network on cable channels around the state, and I had just sold the business actually, and was looking for some more work. And I was actually in church, and I'm walking down the aisle as an usher, I guess it was, and one of the guys grabbed my shirt and said, "Hey, Alex." I said, "What?" He said, "Do you know I bought the newspaper here in Grass Lake?" And I said, "No." He says, "Can you write?" And I said, "Well, a little bit." He said, "Well, come on in, I want to talk to you." So I went in there, and he had purchased the paper and then was trying to keep it going, but his obligations were taking him away from the paper. He couldn't do it. He said, "Do you want to give it a try?" So I wound up buying a newspaper in 2006, and I've been publishing that newspaper ever since then. It's a weekly newspaper. I also published a monthly periodical called Kids in Common. It serviced most of Jackson County with basically information on what parents' resources are available in the county. I did that, and then I was able to put the books together as well. So I keep myself busy. I like to write. I hate to rewrite, but that's the way it goes if you want to get it in print. This book, by the way, is printed just across the street at McNaughton and Gunn. So they're a great bunch over there. I have since worked with other printers in the area. So from where I was born to where I had these experiences to where I got it printed, about 35-mile radius. So this is a made in Michigan book. I hope you appreciate it, and they make great gifts. I'll tell you that right now. Yes?
How much has the technology changed the way you do things?
Well, for the newspaper,
Yeah.
a great deal. A great deal. I can make this newspaper myself. There's no way this could have been done in the 80s. I compose it in software, then I save it as a PDF file, send it over to my printers in Brooklyn, and then I go down there and collect it, sort it, stuff it, label it, bag it, tag it, and take it to the post office. Then I go to my retail drops and the retail stores that sell my newspaper, and I collect my 75 cents. I finish the day with going around in circles because all the quarters in one pocket. I can't quite keep it going straight. So people laugh, but I tell them I live in a 2-bit world because quarters. I've got tons and tons of them. So that's the technology has changed an amazing amount. the way information is disseminated these days has changed a huge amount. Today it's all going to the phone. The old smartphone is where it's at. I put out the newspaper, but I still get 50,000 hits a month on my website. People are downloading information left and right on that. And one thing about my newspaper I just love, and people love it too, is that I reprint a 100-year-old column every week. And people can see their family names in there. They can learn a lot of history from it. I always get comments on how much people appreciate the archives of these old stories. That and the police briefs are probably the two most popular read articles in the newspaper. So, again, there's local family names on that as well. So this goes to show how that. But yeah, when my mom was doing a newspaper, it was a lot of work. There was a whole bunch of them that got together, and then they would send it up to Mason, and it was printed up there, and then they'd go get it and bring it back and take care of it from there. But they didn't have the software. I don't think they did the typesetting, but they did the writing, and then they would get it up there, and they would convert it for them or something. Real time, it would take a lot of time to do a newspaper, but it was the only outlet for news in Stockbridge. And today it's not like that. Anybody that wants to start a blog can start putting news out, or misinformation out, for that matter. The digital age is, when I've been in creating the software and computers since the late 80s. And I can tell you the digital age has given great opportunity for those who want exposure, but also just as much opportunity to those that would be disparaging. And just to let you know, if you ever read it on the internet, don't believe it, verify it. I've fallen prey to a few things that come across the internet to me about, Mars crashing into Earth or something like that. Wow, everybody should know about that. It goes in the paper and boop, not true. So I always try to research things. Skype, I do that. And then also what is the one website you can go to check on whether it's true or not? Snopes. I go there quite a bit. And being on the internet, I bookmark your political representatives. I have them bookmarked. I'm on Facebook. Get a lot of feedback on Facebook. I get a lot of news out of Facebook. New babies or everything but pictures of food. I don't do that on the newspaper because I guess that's the domain of Facebook. What you're having for lunch? Plate of food. Cool. All right. I don't know how many of you do Facebook, but in the early days, it was all what people were talking about. And now you've got pictures of food, pictures of, advertising and stuff like that. So it's changed a little bit. But it is free, which is tough for me because I sell a 75-cent newspaper. It is still in existence. After Dad passed away, my sister and her high school sweetheart and husband bought the farm and immediately pulled the house up off its foundations, gutted it to the frame, and moved it and rebuilt it. And they uncovered huge amounts of acorns and the resultant excrement. They found snakes and pathways and stuff in that house. Most old farmhouses are infested. And one of the conditions for my brother-in-law to go ahead with my sister to buy this place was that they had to get rid of that infestation. So they pulled it off its foundations because it happened to be on a hill that had a cistern that was home for hundreds of milk snakes. And every spring they would come crawling out of that cistern and just infiltrate our basement and steps, and you'd catch them out and around. I still see them around. I still see them there. It's generations after generations. These snakes are still there. So one of my jobs was feeding the dogs, and that dog food bag, the big 50-pound Purina dog chow, at the top of the steps of the basement. And I would open that door up very carefully. Because the first thing you would check, make sure that that bag was still closed. A lot of times you'll see it was partially opened. Well, that's not a good sign, because something's in there. Something opened it up. Second thing, I would make sure that the ice bud wouldn't fall on my head or whatever else was stacked up, because they normally would take it down in the basement. So I could get bonked in the head by a 40-pound steel pole, or who knows what would come in. So I checked that out. Then I would reach around, and I don't know who designed this, probably my dad, but that light switch was like 2 steps down the steps. So I'd turn that on, and it would light up, and then I would take the Maxwell House coffee can, scoop out some dog food, and take it out and feed the dogs. But you learned to be deliberate in what you did as a kid on the farm. You learned to plan ahead. I know that walking barefoot teaches you to plan ahead, especially if you're in a hurry. You got to plan a long way ahead. So those are some of the things that I learned on the farm that have held well for me in my life. So, but things have changed so much on that. Yes.
Did Dad run a farm and a medical practice, or was somebody else doing the farming?
Well, he did the planting and cultivating. He did the plowing, but we had other acreage that we did share crop with our neighbors, because they could come in and knock off a field and be done with it in a day, where Dad would be going through his cyclic hysteria, trying to find a part here, a part there, or something would break down. He was a physician, but he was a gentleman farmer. So my brothers would end up driving a hay wagon. And one thing was our old hay baler. It was an old McCormick hand crank, and that needed the hay would be in the field, turned and ready to go. Storm clouds gathering on the horizon, and you couldn't get that McCormick to fire up because you need maintenance. And my dad would just figure you'd turn the key and start it. No, that's not how it worked. So we were forever racing against time. I do remember the wheat field in one time when the rain was coming in on it. And you know how when the fields are white for harvest and those heads are bent down, any little wind is going to knock that stalk down, and if you can't get it up off the ground, it's going to either sprout or rot. And I remember standing there watching the rain coming in across the other neighbors' fields. And he was saying, there goes our tax money, there goes our tax money, there goes our, and then he added a few more expletives of his own. And, but that's how it was as a farmer. As much as you love being connected to the land, because I dearly love being on that farm, you are at the vagaries of nature, and I think Rudyard Kipling said that nature is piteously indifferent. Piteously indifferent. And it doesn't care who it crushes, it doesn't care who it uplifts, it just is. And that's true on a farm. Life and death was something I had to deal with every day. It didn't make me any more callous towards it. It made me much more appreciative of what we do have. And I think that's something that's missing today in schools, is a connection to the land. I ask kids, so do you have a garden? And invariably they don't. So, do you have any plants in the house? And, yeah, Mom takes care of them. How about a pet? Do you have a pet? No, not really. We had a dog once, but nobody played with it and it got run over, that kind of thing. But to me, I've always had a dog. I've always tried to grow things. I've always tried to get my kids involved in it, because I know, and Pearl Buck will tell you, that the land, it's the land, it's the land. And it always gets back to the land. And if you're having a good meal, you got to thank the farmer for that. And I thank my neighbors for that. They were hardworking people. They helped us out. We helped them out. Christmas time was wonderful. We always would travel, and they would come by and bring loaves of bread and stuff like that. It was a slower paced, more connected type of a community, I think, in those days. I say more connected, but now everybody on Facebook is connected with 7,000 or 8,000 other friends. So maybe they're more connected. I don't know. Just wait till the lights go out and see how connected you are. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, yeah. So, again, my name's Alex Weddon. I own the Grass Lake Times. I have a sample for everyone here, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear me. Thank you.